So good morning everyone. Uh, can you confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And can you see the pages also? Means the desktop.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we'll start. Okay. So we'll go to a new topic today. Any questions from the previous topics regarding the classification of PDs or regarding the governing equations? Please read those parts from the notes that I have already uploaded in the website, okay, in the portal. And if you have missed any classes, you can also go through the video lectures, which are also uploaded in YouTube. And that part also is quite important. Although it's not directly part of the CFD, means the say chapters which is regarding CFD. That preliminary part is required to get a good understanding of how to approach a CFD problem, means which type of solution method will be used for a particular CFD problem. That is why it is important. And governing equations are very much a part of CFD problems. Without governing equations, you cannot solve any CFD problem. Ultimately, the target of the CFD method is to just devise one or devise some strategy for solving the governing equation in a given domain. So anyway, so we'll come to the next part, which is discretization. So let us start with getting an idea about what is discretization. Okay. So in CFD you have a certain domain, right? In CFD you have a certain domain, and just let me bring my writing. Okay. Just a sec. So in CFD you have a domain like this. Okay. I hope you can see, and there is not much lag. Sometimes remember that my voice will go faster than what you are seeing on screen because of lag. Okay, internet lag. So there is a domain with certain boundary conditions and governing equation. So the first thing that we do is discretization. What do? We divide the domain into certain number of subdomains. Okay, so like this we divide the domain. Drawing is not very accurate, but you will get the idea. So we divide the domain into a large number of subdomains. Okay. Each of these subdomains, say this subdomain, each of these is known as a control volume, and each of them is represented by a grid point. Okay, at its center, or it may or may not be at the center. So each of these has a grid point. Okay, and the values are stored only at the grid point. For example, the temperature values, they will be only stored at the grid point. So the temperature here may be 350 degrees centigrade. In the next grid point, it may be 352.3 degrees centigrade. In the next grid point, it may be 354.1 degrees centigrade. Okay, like this it is stored. There is no temperature variable or values present between the grid points. So you have to interpolate between the grid points. Only temperature values or only like any parameter like velocity or temperature or pressure or any other parameter. All of these like conductivity, material properties like conductivity, CP, specific heat, then viscosity, density, all these are only stored at these discrete locations, at these points, not in between anywhere. Okay, it is not stored continuously. You cannot store continuously because you don't know what is the variation from one point to another, and you cannot also have infinite number of points because computer storage is limited. So you have some limited number of points. You can make say 1 lakh points or 1 million points, but you cannot make indefinitely large number of points. So this process of dividing the geometry is known as, in common language we call it as meshing, but you are actually discretizing the domain into a set of control volumes, each of which is represented by a grid point. Okay. And then the governing equations that are present are valid for the entire domain as well as for the control volume. So the governing equations, say for example the energy equation, those are approximated for this control volume based on the grid point and neighboring grid point values. We will see an example. Okay, based on the grid point, neighboring grid point values, these governing equations are approximated, and instead of the derivatives that are present in the governing equations, we remove the derivatives to get algebraic equations. Okay, ultimately instead of differential equations, partial differential equations, you have simple algebraic equations. Algebraic equation means equations where there are no derivatives. Okay, so like this we obtain for each control volume. So you will have, say, if you have here how many 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 36 control volumes are present. So we will have 36 equations. For each control volume, one equation will be there for the governing equation. Okay, so 36 control volumes, 36 equations, and 36 unknowns will also be there because at each of this node the variable is unknown. So ultimately you solve the 36 equations together to get the 36 unknowns, or n number of equations together to get n number of unknowns. Okay, so we along with the boundary conditions. This process will become apparent later on, but this is what is essentially called as discretization. Okay. So what is discretization? Divide the entire domain into number of subdomains. These subdomains may be called as control volumes or elements, etc. Okay, in general we call them as control volumes in finite volume method, which we are going to study in detail. They are called as elements in finite element method, FEM. Okay, but FEM is not very much used in CFD, so we will be calling them as control volumes. Each of these control volume is represented by one or more discrete points. Okay, in finite volume method again, which we are going to study later on, that each one is represented by one grid point. Okay, one discrete point which is called as grid point. It is the representative point. In finite element method, there may be more than 1 points, like 2 points, 3 points for each control volume. So these control volumes are called as elements, and these discrete points are called as nodes in finite element method. Okay. Again, as I was saying, in CFD we don't use FEM very much. Okay. What is FEM? I will quickly explain once, but otherwise it is not used much, and we are not going to study as part of CFD problem. So this is what is control volume and these grid points. Okay. So then what we do? Simplify the governing differential equations for each subdomain into a set of algebraic equations. Say you have the energy equation and two momentum equations, Navier-Stokes equations are there. So three governing equations are there, plus the continuity equation, four equations are there. And four unknowns are there: temperature, u velocity, v velocity, and pressure, p. Okay. So at each grid point you have four unknowns and four equations. So for example, at this grid point you have four unknowns: u, v, temperature, and pressure, and four equations: two Navier-Stokes equation, one continuity, and one energy equation. So in the entire domain, you have 36 into 4 equations and 36 into 4 unknowns. So you solve them together to get the 36 into 4 values. So value of temperature, pressure and velocity at each grid point. Okay, like this we do in a CFD problem. How we do that is part of the most of the course. Means how to discretize is what constitutes most of the course. We will see that there are different methods of discretization, and then even in this way, in each method, like in the finite volume method, there are different approaches for discretization. So which leads to different types of algebraic equations. So that will constitute like lot of classes studying how to discretize. So what do we get after discretization? Ultimately, we get a system of algebraic equations which can be solved to obtain the values of the required variables, as I have already described. Okay. Any questions? Let us consider an example. Okay. So, say there is a governing equation for 1D steady state problem, conduction problem as shown below. dt dx is equal to some value a. Okay. dt dx equal to a. So, this is a one dimensional problem, or d square t dx square is equal to 0. Okay. One dimensional conduction, heat conduction problem, steady state. D square t dx square equal to 0, which gives us dt dx is equal to some constant a. And the domain is also given to us. It's a one dimensional domain of length L. So the domain goes from x equal to 0 to x equal to L. And the boundary conditions are given to us. Two boundary conditions are needed for this steady state problem. Okay. So t is equal to t1 at x equal to 0 and t is equal to t2 at x equal to L. T equal to t1 at x equal to 0 and t equal to t2 at x equal to L. So this is the problem. Okay. Now we will see what is the difference between two approaches. One is the analytical approach and second is the numerical approach, CFD approach. What is the difference? Okay. Instead of solving this entire thing, we'll just have a quick look at what is the difference in approach. So if you want the analytical solution, how do we do it? We have to integrate this, right? We have to integrate this equation. So if you integrate this equation, you get t is equal to ax plus b, where the constants a and b have to be calculated from the boundary conditions. Two constants are there, a and b, and two boundary conditions are there. So the a and b are calculated based on the boundary conditions. So you put x equal to 0 in this equation and t is equal to t1 and get one relation that b is equal to t1. Similarly, you put x equal to L and t is equal to t2 to get another relation and the value of a. So ultimately what we will get, without going into details, is that t is equal to t2 minus t1 into x by L plus t1. Okay. This solution is known as the analytical solution for this equation. What is the feature of this solution? This is a continuous solution valid over the entire domain. Means anywhere for any value of x. If you give any value of x between 0 and L, say L is 1 meter. So any value of x between 0 and 1 meter, if you say that what is the value of temperature at 0.9374 meter, I can just put x equal to 0.9374 along with the other variable values and get the temperature. So anywhere in the domain you are able to get the temperature by putting the x value. Okay. So analytical solution gives a continuous solution valid over the entire domain. Okay. And for this specific problem, the solution is t is equal to t2 minus t1 by into x by L plus t1. Okay. So again, I will say main feature is that for any value of x, a corresponding value of t can be obtained. Okay. And how did we obtain it? The solution by integrating and getting the general solution. Okay. For the entire domain. This is valid over the entire domain. On the other hand, if you consider a CFD approach like a numerical solution, we have to do discretization. As I was saying, we have to do discretization and the solution will be valid only at discrete points. Let me show what it means. Okay. Say you have divided the domain into certain number of grid points. Okay. I am not showing the control volumes here. I am just showing the grid points. You have two boundary grid points and then some internal grid points. So these are individual grid points. Okay. They are at the center of the control volume. So I am showing 3 grid points in between, any 3 grid points. Okay, it does not matter which 3 grid points. So the middle grid point is denoted by the symbol I. The next one is I plus 1. Next one will be I plus 2, like this. And on the left hand side, the immediate neighbor is I minus 1. The next neighbor will be I minus 2, like this. Okay. And the distance between each grid point is say delta x. Okay. This delta x is an important parameter. This is known as grid size, okay, or grid spacing. Number or the distance between two individual grid points. So grid spacing is delta x here. Okay. So now for any point I, okay, not for the entire domain now. Now only for any point I, okay, this I is arbitrarily selected. I can vary from say 2 to the final value before the final one, n minus 1, if n is the total number of points. So for any point I, we can write dt dx equal to a, the same equation, okay, because this is still valid for anywhere in the domain. Okay, the governing equation is valid anywhere in the domain. So dt dx equal to a. Now what we can do is we can write this dt dx, this derivative, as an approximation as the temperature at this point minus the temperature at this point divided by the distance between the 2 points. Okay, so temperature difference by the distance is also approximately dt dx. Okay, so I can write this as Ti plus 1 minus Ti minus 1 divided by 2 delta x, and this is equal to A. Okay, this is more accurate if the distance between these grid points is small. Okay, and if the distance is infinitesimal, means if the number of grid points is infinite, then this approximation becomes fully accurate, means this approximation approaches the differential form. If the distance, if the delta x becomes equal to dx, means it is infinitesimal, then this approximation is equal to this exact value, okay, exact equation that is given. But in real life, you will have a limited number of points, maybe 10 points or 20 points or 100 points. So accordingly, there will be a finite value of delta x, and you will have a finite error also, and equation of this form. Okay, where delta x is the grid spacing. So this is the discretized form. This is known as the discretized form of the governing equation for this grid point I. Similarly, for all the grid points, I can derive discretized equation, okay, based on the value of I. Okay, so here I may be, what is the value of I? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. I is 5, okay, fifth grid point. So I can, for ith grid point, I can write the equation as T6 minus T4 by 2 delta x equal to A. Similarly, for the next one, I will write it as T7 minus T5 by 2 delta x equal to A. Next one, I will write as T8 minus T6 by 2 delta x equal to A. So for all the internal grid points, I can write, apart from the boundary grid points where the values are already given as T1 and T2. Okay. So starting from n equal to 2, I equal to 2, so I equal to pre-final value, which may be n minus 1, if n is the total number of grid points. Okay. So similar equations, as I have just now discussed, similar equations can be formed. Let us keep this in a bigger size. For all the discrete points, and then the equations can be solved together to obtain the temperature values at these points. So the important thing that we should note here is that the temperature values after calculation are only present at these points. Okay, we don't know anything about the temperature between 2 points. After solving, we only get the temperature at these discrete points, at the points that we have obtained after discretization. Okay, we don't know any variation of temperature within 2 points, in between 2 points. Okay, so note that this will give only the values of the variable at the discrete points. Okay, to find the values in between, we need to interpolate. Okay, there are no stored values. So if you divide the domain into 10 parts, you will have 10 values of temperature at a certain distance from each other. So if you want to plot the results, then you have to connect them together, connect the 10 values of temperature together, or plot the individual points. So it will look like discrete points in the plot, similar to that what we do for experimental results. Experimental results are also present at discrete points, right? So you have Say temperature. Temperature is found at discrete points. By using thermocouples, you might find temperature at 8 points. So you can plot the temperature versus length at 8 points and join them together with the line. That is what is done in CFD. But in CFD, the advantage is that the number of points may be quite high. Instead of 10, I can have 1000 points. But in experiments, you cannot have 1000 points because you cannot put 1000 thermocouples in a certain small length. Okay. But in CFD, we can theoretically put any number of grid points. It is only limited by the computational power, so the time required for computation and the RAM that is available, its memory that is available. So this is what is essentially discretization. Okay. I will just repeat again the steps. You divide the entire domain into number of subdomains called control volumes, each of which is represented by one grid point. Okay, for finite volume method. It can be more than one if it is finite element method. Then simplify the governing equation for each subdomain, each control volume, into a set of algebraic equation like I have shown here. Okay, this was a differential equation dt dx equal to a. Now it has become an algebraic equation. There is no derivative. Only it's an algebraic form. Ti plus 1 minus ti minus 1 is equal to 2a into delta x. Okay, this is normal equation, normal algebraic equation. And then solve the equation, set of algebraic equations for the entire domain to get the values over the entire domain, and then plot the results by plotting the values at each of these discrete grid points. Okay. The important thing is that they are discrete grid points and the values are present at only discrete grid points. So this is the main difference between numerical solution and analytical solution. In analytical solution, you know the result at any point between 0 and L. In numerical solution, you have the value at only a certain number of points. For any other point, you have to interpolate in between. Okay, and depending on the grid spacing and the variation, the interpolation may or may not be very accurate. It will become more and more accurate if you reduce the spacing, if you increase the number of grid points. Okay, so yeah, I have only 3 grid points, then it will be very inaccurate. The temperature profile I will capture will be like a triangular profile. But if I have 1000 grid points, the spacing is very less. So I will have temperature at 1000 points here along the line. So when I plot them, it will give a very accurate picture of the actual temperature variation. Any questions? So let us summarize again what are the steps in a CFD problem. We have already discussed this in the beginning classes when I was going through the slides. But let us formally summarize once, okay, before jumping into different methods of discretization. So the steps that are present in a CFD problem can be divided into 3 types. Okay. First is known as pre-processing. This pre-processing takes a lot of time. This is where you set up the entire problem. Okay. Solver is not doing anything. Means if you are setting up in ANSYS or using your code, you are writing up the code, setting up all the equations, boundary conditions. If you are using ANSYS, you are again creating the geometry, meshing the geometry, setting up all the governing equations with all the relevant parameters. Then other parameters like material properties, everything needs to be given. Okay. So these are the steps in pre-processing. First we set up the geometry, whether using a code or using any like software package. Then once the geometry is set up, geometry setup means you know the various boundaries values x, so like with respect to x, y, z. Okay. So boundary values means extent of the geometry, okay, because it can be an arbitrary geometry. Then select the governing equation. What are the equations that are required for this problem depending on the phenomena involved? So if I am solving a heat transfer fluid with fluid flow, I have to select energy equation plus Navier-Stokes and continuity equation. If I am only solving heat transfer without any fluid flow, I will only select energy equation. If some chemical reaction is occurring, I have to select species transfer equation. So based on the phenomena that are involved, we select the governing equations, and also we decide what are the initial and boundary conditions, again based on the phenomena, actual process. Okay. So for example, heat conduction, we know from practical, say one practical problem, that at one end the temperature should be some temperature like boiling point temperature, and the other end the temperature will be some freezing point temperature. So accordingly we select the temperature, or we know the heat flux. So accordingly, we give some heat flux. So for example, temperature across a wall in a room. From outside there is a heat source. Sunlight is falling on the wall. So we know what is the heat flux rate at which this sunlight is bringing energy to the wall. So this we can put as a boundary condition. So it is up to us to decide and quantify the boundary condition and initial condition for the problem. Okay. And this will obviously depend on the governing equations that are used. So every governing equation will have their own boundary conditions. Okay. So this we have to be careful about, because in some software packages you just give conditions for only certain set of parameters, but we forget that all the other parameters also need boundary conditions, and this tool is itself taking the other boundary conditions based on like default values. Okay. So then the next step is to discretize the geometry. We have seen already what is discretization, dividing the geometry into control volume, and discretize the governing equations next. Okay, after discretizing the geometry. So for each control volume, get its own individual set of governing equations in algebraic form. Then we also have to input the material properties, okay, material data. Sometimes this can be done before this discretization also. Okay, you have to input the material properties, so variation of say, conductivity, Cp, etc., density. Input the initial and boundary conditions. We have already decided, but now we have to input it to the code or to the software. Okay, what are the initial and boundary conditions? Then set simulation parameters. Simulation parameters are like time step, convergence criteria, things like that. Okay. So what, like at what point we will say that simulation has finished. So finishing time or finishing criteria, end criteria, all this has to be set. Okay. So these are known as simulation parameters. A lot of other simulation parameters are there under relaxation factor. These will become clear later on. Okay. So this is the first part of the problem, which is known as pre-processing. Then we run the solver, either it is a code or the software tool like ANSYS, and or the code solves this system of discretized algebraic equations with the values that are given of the initial and boundary condition and material properties. It solves the equations. If necessary, iteration is used. So if it is a non-linear problem, or if the method involves iteration, iteration is used. Otherwise, directly also the solution can be obtained by solving n number of equations to get n unknown values. If it is an unsteady problem, means there is variation with time, we also solve along the time. So march along the time with time steps. So if say we want to solve from 0 to 100 second and take a time step of 0.1 second. So first we find the value at 0 second, already it is given. Then we find the value of 0.1 second. Then we find the value at 0.2 second. Like this we march on along the time. Okay. And this is what happens when we have an unsteady problem. Okay, for a steady state problem, we don't need marching along the time. We directly solve the equation to get the values. So after this, so this takes lot of time for the system. Okay, first part takes lot of time for the engineer. So we have to set up the problem. We have to do all the things. Next part, everything is set up. So we have to write the solver for solving the equations, but then the solver will take up and it will run the solution, and depending on the problem, it will take say 1 minute to solve, or 1 hour to solve, or maybe 1 month to solve also. So many of our CFD problems that we do research in takes more than 1 month also to solve sometimes, particularly very complex material problems take 1 month. Each simulation takes 1 month to solve. So we parallelly run lot of simulations. So after you run the simulations and the simulation is finished, then we cannot use the raw data. We cannot show the raw data to others because they will not understand everything. So we have to analyze and we have to understand the data. It is very important part of CFD. Okay. So we have to analyze and we plot the data with various types of graphs. Okay, line graphs, contour maps, and additional calculations if these are needed. So if we want to calculate the heat flux, then based on the temperature values, we can directly calculate. We don't need the solver because heat flux is minus k dt dx, and you know the t at any point. So you can approximate dt dx as T2 minus T1 by delta x like this. So you can calculate the heat flux at any point. Similarly, shear stress also we can calculate based on the velocity values. Shear stress, say along the top surface will be del u, mu del u del y. So u values are known at each grid point and delta y values are known. Again, you can calculate these things. So these additional calculations, say shear stress, heat flux, lift coefficient, drag coefficient, these things can be calculated later on after the solution is done. This is part of post processing. This is known as post processing. Okay. And after this, what we do? So this is one complete set of solution. So if you are not satisfied with the result, if you see that some unphysical result is there, you have to again go back and again reset the rediscretize the geometry, or maybe change the meshing or change some simulation parameter, and again run the entire process to get new results. Questions?
No, sir.
Okay. So there are different methods of discretization. When we say methods of discretization, I am not saying just that dividing the geometry into control volumes. I am also saying how to formulate the governing equations. So both dividing the geometry as well as formulate the governing equations for each of the grid points. Okay. So the two most important methods are known as finite difference method or FD method, FDM. Finite difference method, and the second one is finite volume method, FVM. Okay. We will study both of these in our course. First, we will study finite difference method, which is easier to study and easier to implement also. I will give some assignment problems to write codes based on this, as we have discussed initially. Like some assignments will be given and there will be marks for those also. So you have to write codes based on finite difference method, and we will see that it is very easy to implement, but it has certain limitations. The second method is known as finite volume method. It is slightly more complex, but it is more versatile, more robust and versatile. It can accommodate more complex situations like say non-regular geometry, irregular geometry, or any complicated geometry can be easily tackled using finite volume method. It has other advantages also. So we will study both of these. So first few weeks, first few classes we will study finite difference method. Then the entire next few months we will study finite volume method. The entire rest of the course will be on finite volume method. Okay. There are other methods. One such method you must have heard already, FEM. Okay, so finite element method. This is, so sometimes people get confused. They think FEM is another subject like CFD. Okay, but FEM is not like a like numerical solution process like CFD. Okay, FEM is just a method of discretization mainly. So you discretize the domain into a number of elements which are represented by nodes, and this process and then you develop the governing equations in a different way using variational calculus, and that process is known as finite element method. So it is one of the other types of discretization method, but we don't use it much in CFD problems because it is much slower as compared to finite volume or finite difference method. Okay, for CFD problems it is much slower and it does not have any advantage. But for structural problems, there we use finite element method mostly. For structural problems like bending of a say cantilever beam, or say buckling of a beam, or any structural problem, any deformation problem. Okay, like where you want to correlate or find out the stress strain values. In those type of problems, we mostly use the finite element method for discretization. So that's why that course also separately is very important course and many students take. Okay, but for our CFD, the most important methods of discretization are finite difference and finite volume method, and this is what we are going to study in the rest of the course. How to discretize the governing equation step by step we have to study, starting from each of the terms. Okay. Still some time is there, so we will continue this. Okay. So we will start the finite. I will just give an introduction of the finite difference method today, and in the next class we'll actually start the discretization process, how to use finite difference method for discretization. So what is the main idea behind finite difference method? The main idea is that we have to express all the derivatives that are present in a governing PDE. So PDE has large number of derivatives, right? Second order derivatives, first order derivatives. So all these derivatives we need to replace with suitable algebraic equations. How are these algebraic equations derived? These are derived based on Taylor series expansion. Okay. So the main idea in finite difference method is that we convert all the derivatives that are present in the governing PDE to suitable algebraic equations, okay, algebraic difference equations using Taylor series expansion. These algebraic equations are like difference equations like T1 minus T2 by delta x, as we have already seen, okay, in one case here. I did not mention here, but this is also like using a finite difference method. So we have converted this governing equation, differential equation into algebraic difference equations. So there is a difference and this is an algebraic equation. So this is how we use finite difference method. Okay. And because the equations are in terms of differences, it is known as finite difference method. Why it is called finite? It will be clear later, but mainly the idea is that, so two things are there. One is that you get the value at only some discrete points, okay, finite number of points, and as a result, you have the values or the equations at only finite number of points, okay, not over the entire continuous domain like analytical solution. So just I will refresh your memory about Taylor series before going into the next class and starting the finite difference method. Okay. So today we will just take a look at the Taylor series expansion because you may not remember what is the Taylor series expansion. So if you have any continuous function fx, okay, continuous means if function f is, so it continuously varies along the direction of x, okay, there is no sudden jump or like no region where there is no solution. It is a continuous function, okay, continuous variation, like say temperature variation during a conduction problem. So in that case, if it's a continuous function, we can write this value of the function at any other value near x, okay. So say we have the value at x, f at x, okay. So we can find the value of f at x plus delta x, where delta x is a small number, okay, incremental value. So we can find the value at f x plus delta x using this summation of infinite number of terms. What are the terms? Fx plus first derivative of f del f del x into delta x to the power 1 divided by factorial 1 plus second derivative, okay, second partial derivative del square f del x square into delta x square by factorial 2. Then we will have del cube f del x cube, then delta x to the power 3 by factorial 3, and like this we will continue. So in general, the nth term will have n plus 1th term because this is the second term. We'll have del nf del x n delta x to the power n divided by factorial n, and this will go on towards infinity, okay. And as the typical values of delta x are very small, okay, so this delta x will be larger than delta x square will be larger than delta x cube. So the terms which are further away are very small because delta x to the power n is a very small number, and also the factorial value increases, okay. So ultimately this number, although this may be a larger number, but the overall value is much smaller for the later terms. So initial terms are more important as compared to the later terms, okay. So I will show you an example of using Taylor series expansion so that you grasp the idea how to do it. So for this we will take a function, continuous function fx is equal to sine 2 pi x. as shown here. Okay. So if fx is equal to sine 2 pi x, at x equal to 0.2, say the value is known. It is given to us. It is equal to, we can calculate the value sine 2 pi into 0.2. So if you use a calculator, you will find that the value is 0.9511. Okay. So now we want to find the value of fx at x equal to 0.22. Instead of 0.2, I want to find it at 0.22 using Taylor series expansion, not using the direct solution. Okay, using Taylor series expansion. So we don't know the method for using the direct solution. We want to use the Taylor series expansion to find this value. So we are going to do that. Before that, let me just write the actual solution. Directly you can find the value f equal to f at 0.22 is sine 2 pi into 0.22, which is 0.9823. Okay. I am just writing the actual solution so that you can compare with the value that we will obtain using Taylor series expansion. Okay. Let us keep this open. So remember the Taylor series expansion. Okay, it is shown here on the top. Okay. So if I just select only, I cannot select infinite number of terms, right? Because my computer does not have the capacity to store infinite number of terms or calculate infinite number of terms. So I have to decide how many number of terms to take. I can take 10 terms or 5 terms or 3 terms. Okay. So if I use only one term, the first term, okay, then accordingly the approximation is that fx plus delta x is equal to fx by ignoring all the other terms. Okay. This is just an approximation using one term, very crude approximation. So in that case, what will be the value of the variable at 0.22? Value of the function at 0.22. By using only one term, we get that this is equal to f into x. F of x. So f of 0.2, which is 0.9511, which we already know. So this has an error of 3.2% if compared with the actual solution. So we see that the error is too much. So if I want to decrease the error, I can take one additional term. So now I will take two terms, okay, first term and second term, and ignore all the other terms. Using two terms, now we can write this as f at 0.22 is approximately equal to f of x. So f of 0.2 plus del f del x into delta x by factorial 1. Okay, del f del x. So first derivative of the function, first derivative of sine 2 pi x, okay, which is 2 pi into cos 2 pi x, 2 pi into cos 2 pi x. So we will take the first derivative. We have written 2 pi into cos 2 pi x. X is 0.2. Okay, we will have to find the derivatives at the original location itself, not at the new location. At the new location, you don't have any idea about how to find the values. At the original location, we are finding the value into delta x. Delta x is the distance between the 2 points. So delta x in this case is 0.02. Distance between 0.2 and 0.22. 0.02 divided by factorial 1 divided by 1. So this gives us a value of 0.9899, which is 0.775% error. We see that the error has reduced. Similarly, if I use three terms, I also need to add this quadratic term. Okay. Again, you can find the approximation. f.22 is approximately equal to f at 0.2 plus 2 pi cos 2 pi x into delta x by 1, and then del square of del x square. So second derivative. So you have to again take a derivative of 2 pi cos 2 pi x. So it will give us minus 4 pi square sine 2 pi x. Okay, minus 4 pi square sine 2 pi into x into delta x square, as you can see here, delta x square by factorial 2. So this gives us a value of 0.9824. Okay, and this is approximately 0.01% error. If you take even more number of terms, you will see that the error is decreasing. So by taking more terms, I can decrease the error, but computational cost is increasing. So we need to have a compromise. We have to take a limited number of terms so that computation is limited to a certain number of terms. Remember, calculating the factorial and these products, etc., take a lot of computational time. Okay, so each of the term takes a lot of computational time. So if you have to do it for 1 million grid points again and again for the unsteady problem, you can imagine how much time it will take. So let us stop here. Okay, we will continue this discussion in the next class. Well, what I will show that how the Taylor series is related to finite difference method, and then we will use the finite difference method to actually discretize or get the derivatives of for some of the different types of derivatives that are present in the equation, like first order, second order, mixed derivative, second order normal derivative, things like that. So we'll stop here. Any questions? Please go through the material before the next class, because this will be, means you have to connect today's class to the next class. So whatever I have gone through, particularly this Taylor series expansion, this is needed very much. You have to remember this for the next class. Okay. So otherwise you will be just blankly staring at the screen. So you have to be very careful. Means you have to study in between so that you understand the subsequent classes. So we will continue discussing this Taylor series expansion and how it is related to finite difference scheme in the next class. Okay. And for the next few classes, we will keep on discussing our finite difference method. Then we will go to finite volume method. So few classes before the midsem, then all the classes after the midsem are on finite volume method. Okay. So if there are no questions, we'll stop the class. Thank you then.